In the last video, we added all sorts of things. We added animations, rolling down slopes, long jumps. In this episode, we're going to take that even further and just add a bunch more functionality. Loads of animations everywhere. And we're just going to extend this Mario-like controller. Before I go any further, I just want to say thank you so much for the response to the first video. I was absolutely blown away. I never thought I'd get 600, 700 subscribers and counting in just that first video. So thank you so much. And now back to the interesting bit. I created a new level to run around. It's sort of like a gladiatorial arena kind of layout. The game is going to have this big tower which has these circular floors that you have to sort of progress through. So this is sort of like in keeping with how I imagine certain levels of the game to look like. I added a crouch animation so he doesn't just sort of shrink down and keep stuck to the floor, you know, he shrinks in the air and then has a little drop and a little settle animation when he lands. And I added a little crouch walk animation which really, you know, shows his limited range of movement while he's in this crouched state. He's sort of very much shuffling awkwardly from side to side, shifting his whole body weight just to get around, and I thought that was quite cute. It's similar to Mario's animation for the crouch walk in the 3D Mario games. I wanted to give the character the ability to grab onto ledges and either climb up them or climb around them. And there are two ways to do this. The first is that I could just detect all geometry and just let the character decide which things it should be climbing up on its own. And the other way is to actually specify ledges, and I think this is the much better way because then you won't get funky, you know, collisions happening on walls and the character accessing parts of the level that it shouldn't. And also all of the climbing and the ledge detection will just be super slick. So I've got this grabber set up that sort of moves around the edge of an object on a rail, on like a spline, and it detects how far away the player is, and if the player gets close, it's going to basically grab him out of the air, and then that's the thing that will move around the edge of the object to create the effect of the character climbing around. And the player's just going to be stuck to it while it's doing this. So I got the cube following the player as it's running around, and then I got some basic snapping set up so that, as I said, it just grabs the player out of the air when he gets too close. But as you can see, it's sort of turning the corners very sharply, so I had to smooth that out. Then once I had this set up, I wanted to make it so that the player sort of shuffles along the edge, bit by bit, and also made it so that there's a delay from when you actually grab onto the wall and you can then actually start moving. Then I added this little hang animation, which plays when you grab onto the ledge for the first time, and you sort of see that the player has some weight to him, and he sort of stretches out a little bit and then settles. And also added a idle hang animation, which is very similar to the idle animation when he's standing, and he's just like pistoning up and down again. Then I added some basic up and down movement for when he's moving around the ledge, just to get an idea of whether he's climbing at the right rate before I go into animation. And then I added some animations of him shuffling along, and his head sort of turns in the direction that he's going to anticipate the movement. I also had to create a different camera setup to track the player properly as he's climbing. And as you can see, climbing also works when you're going at like weird angles, and you can drop down out of a ledge grab, and you can jump up and jump to the side, and it works on moving platforms. And yeah, I'm just really happy with how this turned out in general. It feels really stable and solid, and I'm not afraid that it's going to break in unexpected ways, which it probably would have if I'd done just ledge detection on all geometry. And I added another climbing wall just to test it out a bit more, and I'm actually having a lot of fun with this already, like moving around with the character. Doing this particular bit of the level feels a bit like a theme park where you climb up to the top and then you ride down and then you want to climb back up again. I also improved the maths for working out how much acceleration you get down hills again. And then I did a bunch of refactoring of the code, which is basically just means cleaning up code. And then I wanted to figure out a quintessential part of 3D platformers, which is wall jumping and wall sliding. So when you jump at a vertical wall, you're going to stick to it and then slide down a little bit at a certain rate, and then you'll be able to jump off, and you'll be able to jump from wall to wall to traverse, steep areas. So first of all, I just got the character basically sticking to the wall and turning around in anticipation for playing this, slide jump animation. He wants to be facing in the correct direction. Then I got the basic slide working and making sure he drops off of surfaces when there's no wall left anymore. And also made it so that if you hold the direction away from the wall for a little bit, then he'll just come unstuck. And also had to make it so that if you come into contact with a ledge while you're sliding, it will then transfer you to the ledge rather than continuing sliding. Then I created a little jaunty pose for the slide animation, And there's a little settle animation when he jumps onto the wall. He kind of springs a little bit. And then I got jumping off of the wall working and made it so that, you know, when you jump off of a wall, you have a more set arc. So you jump away from the wall a bit more. You have less control over your direction. But it also means that it makes it really easy to do these wall jumps from side to side. And again, I'm really pleased with how this turned out. I'm not like the strongest when it comes to maths, so it feels like a turning point for me where I've just been able to work these things out a bit better than I used to be able to, and it's really encouraging moving forwards that I'm able to make these things really work and make them look like they look in my head. I added a little transition animation into the roll, so he sort of hops out of the air and lands on the floor and does a little bounce into the roll instead of just sort of, you know, snapping to the floor. And then I added a cute little walk animation. It's like a tiptoe, so his arms go up and it blends between this and the actual walk as well, so you can sort of do a halfway between a tiptoe and a run. And then I really shouldn't be working on stuff like this at this early stage in the game, but I added some effects for footsteps, and it color picks the ground so that the smoke will be the color of the thing you're walking on. And so it seems like you're almost, you know, walking on pastels or something, or chalk, and it gives it this really nice sort of toyetic feel. And I added the same thing for the wall slide animation, so that when you're sliding down the wall, it creates this smoke trail. And I think on these big blank surfaces, it actually helps you to judge the speed at which you're descending a bit better. So in the last devlog, I mentioned that I've been thinking about this game for a while, but I didn't really talk about the story that I have in my mind at all. So I thought I'd just do that a bit in this episode, and you'll have to forgive the sketches. They're not final designs by any means, they're just things that I threw together in order to explain a little bit about my idea. So the story revolves around this little robot character that at the moment I'm just calling Null, and he's a bit of a mystery. He just boots up one day and doesn't have any sort of memories or experience. And as he meets people to try and find out something about himself or about the world, he discovers that the other robots in the world don't really know how to interpret him as a presence. They seem to lack the programming or the capability of understanding him as a thing. Now, this doesn't really make sense in terms of human logic, but imagine to the robots, if their language is binary, zeros and ones, then Null is just a 2 or even a null. There's just something about him that doesn't make sense. And combined with that, he looks a lot like the sort of this world's evil overlord, if you can imagine that, this cute little robot. Everybody's scared of Null's appearance at first because he looks so much like this evil ruler. All the robots understand that Null couldn't be this person because this particular robot was destroyed in an event a long time in the past, which saw these 9 robot sort of guardians, protectors of the world, turning evil themselves, and this one main overlord robot getting destroyed. And nobody's heard from him for millennia. But these 9 other robots, which aren't quite so bad as the old terrible ruler, each now hold dominion over a separate part of the land. And so the story revolves around you sort of liberating these areas and turning these guardians back to good. Now the world that this is based in is basically just this huge desert with this city in the center, and a large portion of the game focuses around this building within the city called the Battle Tower. And this is a building sort of inspired by tropes from a lot of animes and different video games, including Final Fantasy VII and Hunter x Hunter. But essentially the idea is you fight your way up, and the more you progress, the more you sort of get rewarded. And in order to access these sort of 9 evil guardians who are sort of scattered throughout the land, you'll need to compete in the battle tower to gain abilities that allow you to do platforming that gives you access to these areas. So to keep things manageable, the areas outside of the city won't be particularly like built up or dense and complicated for me to build. It'll just be this one main city and then these sort of 9 quests that you go on to defeat these other robots. And I imagine that there's another aspect to the game which is centered around like treasure hunting and looting and even engineering different parts, which will also help in fighting anything And you actually do this treasure hunting by training dogs and combining those with, you know, machinery that you sort of find or engineer in order to search out the map, the world map, for different, you know, new different bits of loot and components to add to your, you know, arsenal. So the game loop will be sort of like, you know, venture out into the desert, find the things you need, come back to the battle tower in order to beat the person, in order to get the new ability, which then allows you to get to the next boss. And then you do the loop again, and you venture out and you treasure hunt, and then you battle, and then you go and find the boss. And all of these things are completely subject to change. I don't expect any of this to stay completely the same by any means, but I thought I'd just mention exactly what's in my head right now. So if your reaction to that is, well, that's far too big an idea for you to pull off on your own, you're right. My eventual goal would be to get funding for this game, or get a small team together, either do a Kickstarter or, you know, or apply to the Indie Fund or something similar. And my goal at the moment is just to get a proof of concept together, a prototype, get like maybe a playable demo working of the first portion of the game or whatever, and then see where it goes. So this game will be bigger than me, and if that doesn't all pan out, then I can always scale back and just make it a collectathon or whatever I like. And that's it. Thanks so much for watching. I've had some really great suggestions from you guys in the last video. If you want to suggest anything else, please let me know. If you want to support me, you can check out my free mobile game. It's a party game for 3 to 16 players with a new challenge every round. It's called Gogogo. Thanks guys for all the support, and I'll see you in the next episode.